Hi, this session is on multiplying decimals, and let's just cover a few keywords and key skills you may need to know for this. So let's just quickly recap these two important points. The first one is what to do when we multiply by 10, 100, 1,000, etc. So we have looked at this in class, but it's just important to make sure we understand how to do that and how we move the decimal. And also what we mean by decimal places. That's another important keyword that you'll come across. So have a go doing this question. It's pretty straightforward, but just practice for yourself. Now, I look at this and I know that none of my numbers will be changing. That 2 will be there, that 1 will be there. So those values won't change, but what will be changing is that decimal point. It's going to be moving. Because we're multiplying, it will move to the right, and I know how many times it will move because of my 3 zeros. That's how easy it is. I'm going to write it out again, just down here, just so I have more space. So 2.01. And what I'm going to do is, because I can see that I'm moving 3 places and I only have 2 digits here, I'm going to add a 0 at the end, just so I don't get confused. And now I'll move my decimal 3 places. So 1, 2, and 3. And that's its new spot. So my answer will be, I can cross that one off. It will be 2, I've got 2, 0, 1, 0, and a decimal point. So that decimal point, because it's sitting at the end, it can just be invisible. So my number is now 2010. Nice and easy. Now the other thing we're going to look at is decimal places. Now all I want you to do with these 3 questions, I want you to tell me how many decimal places each one has. Okay, so if you're not sure what we mean by decimal places, it's this simple. How many numbers are there after the decimal? So here's my decimal point, okay, and how many numbers after it? So I've got here 1 and 2 there. So this has 2 decimal places. Decimal, sorry, looks funny there. Places. Number 2, how many decimal places do we have? That 3 is in the ones column, so it's not a decimal place. But I've got here 1, 2, 3, 4. So this has 4 decimal places. That's how easy it is. And number 3, count how many numbers do we have after the decimal. We do include zeros because zeros are adding a value. So we've got 1, 2, and that one has 3 decimal places. So that's how easy it is. So make sure you write that keyword down and put it in maybe your study cards, because you will come across it. Now before we multiply with numbers that have decimals, it's important that we revise how to actually multiply using whole numbers. So I want you to try these 2 questions. The first one, it's easier than the second one, and you shouldn't have to carry on the first one, but have a go. If you have forgotten, then continue watching. So with the first one, it's important that when we're multiplying, it's better to have the larger number on top, and make sure everything is lined up correctly. That 2 is in the ones column under the 3, otherwise it'll be all confusing. Okay, so with this one here, we simply start in our ones column and make our way to, in this case, the hundreds. So 2 times 3 is simply 6. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so that was pretty straightforward. There was no carrying, no magic zeros, and okay, so with our second one, this is when it starts to get a little bit more trickier, but once again we do the same thing. So we'll start with, in this case, always start in our ones column. So here's our 8, and I'll use the 8 first. So we've got 8 times 1, which is 8. 8 times 3, which is 24. This is where we put the 4 down and we carry that 2. And then 8 times 6, which is 48, and don't forget to add the 2. So 48 plus 2 is 50. And now we write that 50 because we have no more numbers to continue with. Now, what I like to do is, because I may have more working out with my next number, I like to rub out whatever numbers I've put on there. Okay, in that case, the 2 is now gone. And that might help you when it comes to carrying with larger numbers. So this 2 here, it's really in the tens column, so that's actually saying 20. Okay, now because it's in the tens column, I have to put a 0 here. So when I start off with my 2, in this case 2 times 1, when I put my 2 down, it's in the tens column. Because remember, that is really 20. And I can see how I have my 20 down there. So please make sure you do that. Don't forget that 0. We only add 1 0 because 2 is in the tens column. And 10 has 1 0. And let's continue. 2 times 3 is 6. And 2 times 6 is 12. So my 2 down and the 1 which is in a new column. Just managed to squeeze it in. Sorry about the delay. Okay, and now the final thing we have to do is to simply, I forgot my other line, add up what we have multiplied. So now we're going to add this up. So now we've got 8 plus 0, which is 8, 4 plus 2, which is 6, 6 plus 0 is 6, 5 plus 2 is 7, and our 1 is there. So our number, if I put a comma in there, is 17,668. Now I want you to try question 3, and this one will, I guess, be one of the hardest ones that we'll do. So have a go first. Now once again, always start in our ones column. In this case, I'll be multiplying the 4. So I don't need to add a 0 because a magic 0 because 4 is in the ones column. So let's keep going. So 4 times 3 is 12. So I'll put the 2 down and carry the 1. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. Nothing to carry. 4 times 9 is 36. So I'll put this 6 down and carry the 3. And then 4 times 7 is 28. And 28 plus 3 is 31. And because there's nothing else to continue with, I'll write my 31. Now what I'm going to do is rub off my working out. So for my next multiplication step, I will have a clear, so I won't get confused. If you're not so messy, then it's fine. Now, moving on to my 1 that's here, I know my 1 is now in the tens column. That is actually saying 10 times 3 in that case. So I'm going to add a 0 here, 1 0, and now 1 times 3 is 3, but we can see it's saying 30. And let's keep going. This is nice and easy. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 9 is 1. 1 times 7 is 7. And that's it. I might just quickly make more space here. Sorry, because I am using my finger, so it's a bit messy. Or it's harder to write at the moment. Oh, all right, so there's some more space. Now, the next number we're working with is our 2. And that 2 is in the hundreds column, because this number here is 214. And because now we're working with our 2 and our new line, and we know it's in the hundreds column, and 100 has how many zeros? It has 2. I'm going to add those 2 zeros to make sure my 2 is starting off in the hundreds column. And that's it. So now 2 times 3 is 6. And we can see how we've got 600, because 6 is in the hundreds column. And let's continue. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 9 is 18. Put the 8 down and carry the 1. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. And we can see each number is in its own column. And like I keep saying, if you are messy, I want you to, before doing this, draw some columns to help you. So everything is in the right column, okay? All right, so now we simply have to add what we have multiplied. 2 plus nothing there is 2. 5 plus 3 is 8. 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Carry the 1. We've got 2 there. So 2 plus 9 is 11. Plus 2 is 13. Carry the 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 plus 7 is 11. And 11 plus 8 is 19. Put the 9 down, carry the 1. Almost there. 5 plus 1 is 6. And then we've got our 1. So to read this number, I'm going to add in my comma. And if you're not sure how to add in commas, always start on the end and count every 3. So 1, 2, 3, there's a comma. 1, 2, 3, there's a comma. So I can see it's a large number, and try and read it out to yourself. I'll give you a start. It should be 1 million and so on. Okay, so we're multiplying with decimals. I want you to write down these 3 steps. If you can remember these 3 steps, you can't go wrong. So the first step is you ignore any decimals. Then you calculate it, just like we did with the previous examples. And then the final step is, once you have added what you've calculated, you need to add the decimal in by moving it, depending on how many, instead of place values, how many decimal places, wrong word, you started with. And remember that keyword decimal places, we'll come back to that. Okay, so with this question, our first step is ignore the decimals. So what that means is we've got 0, pretend there's no decimals, 2, 1 now, times 2. Okay, now we don't need to have the 0 in the front anymore because that's just saying 21. So now I simply have 21 times 2. Okay, and we can work this out nice and easily. 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so we've done our first 2 steps. We have ignored the decimal, we have calculated. Now the final step, this is a step that a lot of students forget to do because our answer isn't actually 42. What we have to do now is, where is the decimal in 42? We know there's an invisible decimal right now that is just sitting there, and that has to move. And to know how many places it's going to move, okay, it depends on how many decimal places in our question. So let's count. 0.21, there's 1 and 2 decimal places, okay? There's no decimal places near the 2. 2 is just a whole number. So we have 2 decimal places, which means our decimal down here will have to move 2 places to the left, okay? So we go 1 and 2. And that's our answer. So our answer will be 0.42, or you can write it as 0.42. So grab your calculator and double check that we got the right answer. So 0.21 times 2, I've got 0.42, and we're done. Okay, if you're confident enough, try this question and see how you go. Now, please make sure that when you set this up, don't forget, never do this, because even though I've taught students this, they forget, and they end up going 15.4 and then 3.1. They line the decimals up and they completely forget how to do this. So never do that, okay? First of all, ignore any decimals. That's our first step. Okay, so to do that, I have now 154. Imagine there's no decimal there. And if there's no decimal over here, I've got 31. And now I'll work this out. I'll leave some more space because we have to have some magic zeros. So, starting with in our ones column, 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. Too easy. And now because my 3's in the tens column, I add that magic 0. And let's calculate. 3 times 4 is 12. Put the 2 down, carry the 1. 3 times 5 is 15. Plus the 1 is 16. Put the 6 down, carry the 1. And then 3 times 1 is 3. Plus that 1 is 4. Okay? And now let's add what we have calculated. So 4 plus 0 is 4. 5 plus 2 is 7. 6 plus 1 is 7. And we have our 4. Okay? Now, it's really important that we don't stop here. So I want you, if you haven't worked this out yet, to do the next step. It's really easy, and that's simply moving the decimal. Okay? And to do that, remember, how many decimal places do you see in the question? Well, let's have a look. In the first number, 15.4, there is 1 decimal place. Okay? It's our 4. And in the next one, there's 3.1, so there's 1 decimal place. So in total, we have 2 decimal places. Okay? And because we have 2 decimal places, I'll write it down here, 2 decimal places, Our decimal, which is sitting here, that's invisible, has to go back 2 times. So you ready? 1 and 2. And that's our answer. So I'll rub out this decimal over here, okay? And our answer is 47.74. And double check with the calculator. But that's how easy it is. Okay, I want you to have a go at doing this one yourself and see how you go. So first step is to ignore the decimals. And if I look at this, I can actually see how many decimal places I have. Looking at it, I've got 2 on one side and 2 on the other. So that's 4 in total. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So let's write this without a decimal. So I've got 1362, and now it's 1362. And then that one over there, if I ignore the decimal, I end up with 97. You don't need to leave the 0 there because 0 in front of 97, we don't need it there. And it'll just confuse you. All right, and let's set this up. And let's multiply. Okay, so I'll change my color. We've got 7 times 2, which is 14. Put the 4 down, carry the 1. 7 times 6 is 42. And 42 plus 1 is 43. Put the 3 down, carry the 4. 7 times 3 is 21. And 21 plus 4 is 25. Put the 5 down, carry the 2. And then 7 times 1 is 7. Plus that 2, we end up with 9. And I'm just checking to make sure everything is in the correct place value. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to rub off these numbers because I can see with my 9, I'll have to also carry. And I don't want it to look so messy. Now my 9, don't forget, is in the tens column. So we add that 0. And now we can continue. 9 times 2 is 18. Put the 8 down, carry the 1. 9 times 6 is 54. So 9 times 6 is 54. Plus the 1 is 55. So put the 5 down, carry the 1. 9 times 3 is 27. And 27 plus 1 is 28. So put the 8 down, carry the 2. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 2 is 11. And I write my 11 because there's no other number. And now we add this. So 4 plus 0 is 4. 8 plus 3, we've got 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's 11. 5 plus 5 is 10, plus that 1 is 11. 9 plus 1 is 10, plus 8 is 18. 1 plus 1 is 2. And the 1 just sits there. Now we haven't finished just yet. Now, sorry, I just realized I did make a mistake, so I'll just fix that up. We'll do that bit again. That's why you shouldn't leave your homework till too late, because your brain starts to get a bit fuzzy. All right, so once again, I'll put the 0 there. So I made a mistake with my 9 part. So 9 times 2 is 18. Put the 8 down, and I carry the 1. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 1 is 55. Put the 5 down, carry the 1. 9 times 3, this is where I made the mistake. 9 times 3 is 27. Sorry, and this should be a 5 here. So, because 9 times 6 is 54, plus 1 is 55. Yep, sorry. So put the 5 down and carry the 5. That's a mistake I made. So 9 times 3 is 27, and 27 plus 5 is, where are we, 32. So put the 2 down and carry the 3. And 9 times 1 is 9, plus 3 is 12. So I do apologise for that mistake. So 4 plus 0 is 4. And we've got 8 plus 3, which is 11. Carry the 1. 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. Carry the 1. And we've got 10 plus 2 is 12. So put the 2 down, carry the 1. And we've got 3 and then 1. So that looks right now. And now, before we finish off, we have to make sure we move our decimal place. So it's invisible at the moment. There it is. So I've got 2 decimal places here and 2 there, which means 2 plus 2 is 4. So I have to move it 4 times to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's my number. Okay. So my final answer is 13.2114. And hopefully the calculator shows you that. Okay, so this just involves practice. The only thing that will, I guess, slow you down is if you're not confident with your timetables, and that's something you have to work on, okay? So now what I want you to do, put this in your planners. I want you to go to 3E and do all of questions 8 and 9. There aren't that many questions, but it's enough for you to practice with, and what you don't finish is for homework. Thank you.